From the moment Leo could understand the world around him, he knew he was different. Growing up in a conservative neighborhood, surrounded by expectations of masculinity, strength, and traditional roles, Leo always felt out of place. His heart didn't race at the sight of football games or roughhousing with the other boys. Instead, he was drawn to the graceful flow of fabrics, the vibrant colors of makeup, and the way music could make his body move in ways that felt right. But in a world that seemed to have clear rules about what was acceptable and what wasn't, Leo learned to hide. He spent years playing the part, wearing the right clothes, talking about the right things, all while suffocating under the weight of an identity he wasn't allowed to express. One evening, during a family dinner, when Leo was about 12 years old, his younger sister pointed under the table and giggled, "What's that between your legs?" Leo frowned, thinking his secret had somehow been discovered, terrified that the piece of himself he kept so carefully concealed was about to be exposed. But when he looked down, he saw nothing more than the crumpled edge of a napkin, bunched up awkwardly under his legs. His family left, none the wiser to the storm of emotions the moment had triggered in him. "What's that between your legs?" The question echoed in Leo's mind long after the dinner had ended. It wasn't about a napkin. It was about the questions he had been too scared to ask himself, the fear of living a life that didn't fit the expectations placed on him. As Leo grew into his teenage years, that question became harder to ignore. He was becoming more aware of who he really was, but the fear of rejection, of judgment, weighed him down. The real Leo who loved makeup, fashion, and dancing was trapped inside, desperately waiting to come out. Then, one night, everything changed. It was during his first year of college that Leo's world expanded. Away from the small-minded limitations of his hometown, he found himself surrounded by new people, new ideas, and new possibilities. One night, on a whim, he followed a group of friends to a local club where a drag show was happening. Leo had never seen anything like it. The queens who took the stage were magnificent, dressed in glittering gowns, their faces painted with artistry. They commanded the room with a kind of confidence that Leo had only dreamed of having. They were unapologetically themselves, and for the first time, Leo saw a reflection of what he had been hiding inside himself for so long. As he watched them perform, something stirred deep within him, a mixture of excitement, fear, and longing. He could feel the walls he had built around himself begin to crumble, and in that moment, he made a decision. He wasn't going to hide anymore. Leo spent the next few weeks experimenting, buying makeup, and practicing late at night in his dorm room. He watched tutorials, learned how to blend colors, and slowly began to craft the image of the person he had always wanted to be. He created his drag persona, Aurora Divine, a vision of beauty, strength, and unapologetic authenticity. The first time Leo stepped into the world as Aurora Divine, it wasn't on a stage or in front of a cheering crowd. It was in the mirror of his tiny dorm room. He stood there, staring at the reflection that had always been inside him. Finally staring back, Aurora wasn't just a costume. She was a part of Leo, the part he had kept locked away for so long. In that moment, he felt more himself than he ever had. But even with the joy of discovering Aurora, fear still lingered. Leo hadn't yet told his family or the friends he had known his whole life. He wasn't sure how they would react, and the thought of being rejected by the people he loved was terrifying. Still, he knew that hiding who he truly was wasn't an option anymore. Months passed, and Aurora Divine began to take on a life of her own. Leo started performing at local drag shows, pouring his heart and soul into every number. On stage, Aurora was fearless, commanding, and radiant. Off stage, Leo was still learning how to integrate his two selves, finding balance between the man he had been and the queen he had become. One evening, after a particularly successful show, Leo sat down and realized it was time to share his truth with the people he loved most. He called his family and invited them to visit him in the city, knowing that the conversation ahead would be one of the hardest of his life. When his parents arrived, Leo felt his heart pounding, but he knew this was his moment. He sat them down and, with a deep breath, told them everything about Aurora, about his journey, and about the parts of himself he had hidden for so long. His hands shook, and he braced for the worst. To his surprise, his parents didn't respond with anger or rejection. Instead, they listened. There were tears, there were questions, and there was confusion, but there was also love. His mother, after a long silence, finally said, "We don't fully understand this, Leo, but we love you, and we'll figure it out together." For the first time, Leo felt a weight lift from his chest. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but knowing that his family was willing to try made all the difference. In the following months, Leo continued to thrive. Aurora Divine became a regular performer at some of the city's hottest clubs, and Leo began to make a name for himself, not just as a drag queen, but as an advocate for self-expression and authenticity. He spoke at events, sharing his story, and became a role model for others who were struggling to find their own voice. One night, after a particularly emotional performance, a young fan approached him backstage. The fan, eyes wide with admiration, asked, "How did you find the courage to be yourself?" Leo smiled softly, remembering all the fear, the doubt, and the questions that had once haunted him. He looked at the fan and said, "It wasn't easy, but I learned that the thing between my legs doesn't define me. What defines me is the person I choose to be, and I choose to be real." That simple truth resonated with Leo more than ever. It wasn't about fitting into a box, meeting someone else's expectations, or being confined by society's rules. It was about embracing the fullness of who he was. Both Leo and Aurora, both masculine and feminine, both soft and strong. As Aurora Divine, Leo had found not only a way to express his true self, but a way to inspire others to do the same. The world had once asked him, "What's that between your legs?"
As Leo and Aurora Divine's journey continued, life took on a new rhythm. Aurora's performances grew in scale, her confidence shining brighter with each show, and Leo found himself surrounded by a supportive community that embraced him for exactly who he was. The fear that had once controlled him was gone, replaced by a deep sense of purpose. He wasn't just performing for applause, he was showing the world what it meant to be free. But it wasn't just the stage where Leo found fulfillment. He began hosting workshops for young people struggling with their identities, sharing his story and helping them find their own paths to authenticity. He knew how isolating it could feel to be different, to not fit into the mold that others wanted for you. Through Aurora, he had found his voice, and now he wanted to help others find theirs. One afternoon, Leo was preparing for a big show, a special event that would be broadcast across the city. His family was coming, including his parents, who had since become his biggest supporters. It had taken time, but they had opened their hearts and minds, learning to love every part of Leo, including Aurora Divine. As he sat backstage, applying his makeup with a steady hand, Leo's phone buzzed. It was a message from his younger sister, the one who had once innocently asked, "What's that between your legs?" all those years ago. The memory of that moment no longer held any fear for Leo, it was a reminder of how far he had come. The message read, "Leo, I just want you to know how proud I am of you. You've taught me so much about what it means to be brave, to be yourself. I can't wait to see Aurora tonight. You're amazing, and you inspire me every day." Leo felt a surge of emotion. His journey had never been just about himself. It had been about opening doors for others, showing them that they, too, could live without fear. He had spent so many years worried about how the world would react to his true self, but now he knew that his authenticity had the power to change hearts, including those closest to him. The lights backstage dimmed as the show was about to begin. Aurora Divine's outfit sparkled under the stage lights, a reflection of her boldness, her strength. Leo stood tall, ready to give the performance of a lifetime, but more than that, ready to show the world what it meant to embrace all of who you are. As the curtains parted, and Aurora stepped into the spotlight, the crowd erupted in applause. Among the sea of faces, Leo saw his family sitting front and center, their smiles wide with pride. In that moment, Leo knew that this was what freedom felt like. He was no longer bound by fear or expectations. He had found his voice, his truth, and his place in the world, both as Leo and as Aurora Divine. The music swelled, and Aurora began to move, her performance a celebration of everything she had become. Each step, each turn, was filled with grace and power, but it was more than just a dance. It was a testament to the journey Leo had taken to get here, the struggles, the doubts, the moments of triumph. And as the performance came to a close, Aurora stood in the center of the stage, her arms outstretched, bathed in the warm glow of the stage lights. The applause was deafening, but it wasn't just the sound of approval, it was a symbol of the acceptance Leo had sought for so long, not from others, but from himself. Backstage, As the cheers faded, Leo removed his wig and looked into the mirror. Aurora Divine smiled back at him, but so did Leo. There was no longer a divide between the two. They were one, a powerful, authentic expression of everything he had always been. In that quiet moment, Leo whispered to his reflection, "You did it, you found yourself." Because in the end, the journey to self-discovery wasn't about what the world saw or the labels they put on you. It was about embracing every part of yourself, your heart, your soul, your identity, and knowing that you were enough, exactly as you are. Leo and Aurora Divine had discovered their truth, and it was a truth that could never be silenced. It was a truth that would continue to inspire others, showing them that they, too, could step into the light, unafraid, and shine. Because it was never about what was between Leo's legs. It was always about what was in his heart.